Luke Fox, NHL and Sportsnet. I think he's been sitting on the line. What's up, Luke? How we doing, brother?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Sorry. How long did you sit there? Forever? I told him to get you early, but then I ranted a little longer than I expected to.
From the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, I got your football takes. I got everything.
Okay. Are you a Niners fan?
One of my best friends is.
Oh,
so.
good.
And he's crushed. Yeah.
Good. Send him my regards. Let him know that I'm thinking of him today. Okay. So I don't know. You just heard all my thoughts on Mitch Marner. I'm curious if that's kind of the gist of what you've been hearing lately as well.
Well, I mean, I have not heard that I haven't heard any numbers, but certainly the sense is they want to keep him.
Mm-hmm.
And I did hear Kipper and Bourne, and I thought that was a really interesting segment. I like how Kipper framed it, that maybe this is more Mitch waiting and trying to decide. But is that really such a surprise? He has always had the leverage. It has always been his call. What happens next? I find if the Leafs are making a hard push and throwing big numbers, I would find that a little disappointing, just because I would hope that they would have learned from what happened last year, where they really signed William Nylander when he was at his absolute peak. And Mitch Marner is going through the same thing right now. He was phenomenal in November, one of the best players in the league. He was the engine that kept the team afloat during Austin Matthews being out 9 games. They played their first game apart under Craig Berube in Tampa, and he was equally as good. I like the fact that they're split. He's a fantastic hockey player. If he wants 13.5, I'm sure if he goes to market, he'll get that from some team. I don't know if that team is going to be one that's ready to win a Stanley Cup or is a contender. Mm-hmm. But if he wants to be the man in another market, that's another thing I think people should consider. I mean, his kids are going to have to be pretty old by the time they start paying attention to what other kids in the schoolyard are saying, considering they're not born yet. But I wonder, one thing that's crossed my mind is, does he want to be the guy? Because he's never going to be the guy here, right?
The Kevin Durant question.
He's going to be Geno Malkin to Austin Sid as long as he's here. So whether that means being the guy in terms of making the most money or being the guy who's talked about as the team MVP, does he want to play second fiddle? I think that's a really interesting question.
You know what I'm kind of curious about, too, with the Four Nations stuff and the Olympics kicking back up is, in the NBA, every time guys on Team USA, they go and play for Team USA, you're aware of the conversations that happen, yes? Super teams get formed. Guys talk about their futures. Guys discuss, hey, where would you be and who would you play with and where would you go and what kind of a situation would you like? And it has materialized in things like the horrible Brooklyn Nets team, right? The better version of that is the Miami Heat, who ended up being LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. And yeah, hockey's very different in terms of the money. And so a lot of guys are way more likely to stay in hockey than they are in the NBA, right? Just in terms of the amount of money that they can make, trying to maximize the return on the dollar. But yeah, with the rising cap and being a free agent of that ilk, I would be very curious after a summer where Marner got to see himself with McKinnon, got to see himself with McDavid, got to see himself with the top tier Canadian players, what those guys would be saying with him in private moments when they're just hanging out and they are asking about free agency, right? Whether or not there would be a player there that he really bonds with or gets along with and goes, it wouldn't be the worst thing. Here's some of the perspectives of what it's like for guys in other markets, and especially hearing from other guys who do believe that Toronto is an impossible place to play in given the market pressure.
Yeah, I'm sure those conversations happen. I know they even happen over All-Star Weekend.
Yeah.
So when you got almost 2 weeks together at the Four Nations, and then, they would probably kick up again in the summer when the Olympic teams start doing their trials. They're hockey players, but they're humans. Like, you got all that time on the plane and the bus together. I'm sure those conversations happen. It's interesting that you mentioned Nathan McKinnon, because Colorado they're probably the most close in terms of a parallel situation, in the fact that the Avalanche aren't willing to meet Mikko Rantanen's number, and both Rantanen and Marner, as the top UFAs, Shesterkin too, but he's a bit different animal since he's a goalie. But they play for good teams. The two teams are trying to establish an internal cap, but that internal cap was made with Matthews and McKinnon based on, the cap going up a modest amount, whereas all of a sudden, we're in a summer where it's going to go through the roof, and it probably could go through the roof again the next year. So the agents are saying, I don't care about your internal cap. This is what my player's worth, especially if he signs for 8 years. This deal is, you might have to go above your best player or who you thought was your internal ceiling guy.
Yeah.
So really fascinating situation. So if Colorado can't get something done with the Avs, you wonder if Nate McKinnon's going up to the head office and saying, I really like playing with this Mitch guy. I'm fascinated to see whose line Mitch is on. Is he with Connor? Is he with McKinnon?
Mm-hmm.
It's Sid. It's gonna be fascinating. The rosters, there's gonna be a couple surprises, but the line combinations are going to be great conversation starters.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll do my Team Canada with you because I have Marner with McKinnon because of the stuff from the summer. And I do think that's interesting. And I want to play this out just because this is fun, right? This is just fun. I think this is a fun sports fan conversation. If you were Mitch Marner, right, and Mikko Rantanen didn't get his deal done in Colorado, and I know there's all these tampering rules now, right? They're no tampering. And so you get absolutely killed on this. But, what's to stop McKinnon from giving a good sense that he feels like he and Marner have a pretty good relationship? Your point about, hey, he wants to be the man, that's well put. I think that's a good one. But I kind of think he could have his cake and eat it, too, because here's the thing. You want to be the man for sure. I could see anybody wanting that, especially who is that good. But part of it, too, is that if you did go to Colorado, sure, you're not going to be as beloved as Nathan McKinnon, right? But you're also not going to you're going to be more the number two, or the partner than you are here, right? Where it does seem it's just Matthews' team. Everyone in Toronto has been conditioned to go, this is Matthews' team, this is Matthews' team. Then there's a huge faction of people who are Nylander fans. Marner is never going to be beloved here in this way, especially because he wants the money as well, which is fine, right? In any other circumstance, it's fine. It's just that this guy happens to be from here. And so when there have been these guys that go over, even though Nylander's contract was high, right? It was above cap percentage of David Pastrnak. There was really no justification that you could make at the time to me that William Nylander should get a higher cap percentage than David Pastrnak. I'm sorry. You cannot do it to me. But people went, it's fine, it's William Nylander, whatever, he got it done, he's perfect for the market, blah, 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 blah. With Marner, if he plays here, there are always going to be questions about, whether or not he can handle the pressure and him being the number two, and why did he take all the money if he's from Ontario and he loves it so much. That dynamic goes out the window if he goes to a place like Colorado. So he would have a chance to win. He would be welcomed as a conquering hero, right? Someone who chose Colorado, someone who was coming there to play with Nathan McKinnon. He would get to play with one of the greatest stars in the games who he absolutely pairs with. And he would also get all the money without any of the feeling of he was overpaid because he comes in as a free agent, which means that they didn't have to give anything but the money up, which fans love, right? Which that's what the Tavares argument was. So I actually think that they're the most interesting place out of all the concocted Marner destinations is actually that vacuum that you mentioned if the Rantanen thing doesn't work out, which by all indications kind of feels like there's some real steam that he will hit unrestricted free agency and that he won't return to that team.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really fun hypothetical.
Yeah, that's all we're doing, but that's fun.
But that is all we're doing.
Yeah.
Rantanen has said, I want to stay. Marner has said, I want to stay. I love this team.
So, as you know, athletes, when they say that, it's the most true. You can put it down in pen. It's just a GM saying they're not going to fire a coach, right?
No, I know.
All these things. The truthiest of truths.
I am saying, though, in hockey, a lot of guys just end up re-signing with the team. That is probably still the most likely outcome. But of course. It is fun to dream, and it would make sense if deep down he is tired of it. I mean, Avalanche fans, they're not nearly as vocal on social media or anywhere. They're just a little more accepting. They're a little more just root for the home team.
Yeah. Sing Blink 182. Sing your Blink 182 and be happy with the team.
They're happy.
Yeah.
They're happy.
I don't know. Again, of course, this is not a what do I think is most likely segment. This is not a, hey, This isn't even me being like, hey, watch out. It's just a little fun chat. It's just a little fun chat with two friends thinking about something that's fun. Just like this.
Yeah.
Hey, I would like to let you know, I'm not part. I know that Team Canada extended being like an associate GM to basically every Canadian on the planet because like Dubas was invited. So it was like, okay, if Kyle Dubas is a part of it, then whatever. The bar is fairly low for who gets to be a part of this management group. But I'm not the GM. I'm not a part of the front office, but I have put together my Team Canada for the Four Nations. And I'd like to go through it with you. And you tell me where there are sore spots and you stop me with what you think should be an alternative or something that's in and out. Are you good with that?
Okay.
Okay. So line 1, Point, McDavid, Reinhart. Line 2, Hagel, McKinnon, Marner. Line 3.
Oh, Hagel that high, eh? Okay.
I got to tell you. But when I get through the rest of the guys, too, like you tell me where, how he's going to get bumped down. But I will say this. Hagel, to me, has become one of my favorite players to watch in all of hockey. Like, I just think that he is the epitome of a guy that you put on Team Canada that can play up and down your lineup in a variety of different roles and bring a style of play that to me feels like the return of Canadian hockey. Because like we've only had junior tournaments the last, how long has it been since the Olympics? 2014? Decade? Ugh,
yes.
Dark to say. When I see a lot of these junior hockey tournaments, you know what I think is that we've lost some of what makes Canada hockey. And I think that part of what is going to happen at this Four Nations and the following Olympics is the return of what actually makes us different culturally with this sport. And to me, Hagel actually fits some of that mold while also having the skill. And I think that he could play there. Again, you bring talent so that you can move things around, but would just be the day one things. Line 3, Marchand, Crosby, Konechny. Line 4, this is my favorite line. I call them the care line. Stone, Scheifele, Wilson. So you got some size, you got some meanness, some real competitiveness, just a hell of a checking line. Then my extra forward for Hagee. Thoughts on the forward group? Who you cannot have there? You're
missing Anthony Cirelli.
So I thought so too, but it was between him and Scheifele, and I didn't know what to do with that.
I love the season Scheifele's having.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he's hurting right now. He's a little banged up.
Mm-hmm.
I think he deserves to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Berube, he's such a big game player, but I just don't know. So we talked to John Cooper on the weekend about Team Canada,
mm-hmm.
and the way he talked about Cirelli and Hagel
mm-hmm.
seemed to me that they're probably on the team.
Yeah, I
Cirelli's
liked him.
Such a good two-way guy. He'll kill penalties. You could sick him on Matthews or Eichel, or
mm-hmm.
He'll take on the hard matchups. He's won cups. I don't know, and the fact that the coach knows him, and Doug Armstrong and Don Sweeney have said that John Cooper, his voice really matters in terms of roster selection. It's not just, here, we pick the team, you coach the guys we want you to coach. Cooper's very involved. And the way he was talking about Cirelli, I think he's going to be on this team.
Yeah, I can't even push back on it, too, because one of my thoughts watching the Leafs game Saturday night was, well, don't you just have your PK1 right there with Hagel and Cirelli?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, don't you just have them? Like, don't you go with some of the duos and just say, like, hey, here's two of the guys? I don't know.
It looks like they're going with a couple duos on the back end, too.
Yeah.
Just because that's the other thing. Cooper stressed this is a short tournament. Like,
mm-hmm.
if Canada goes to the gold medal game, there's 4 games
mm-hmm.
total. So it's such a quick turnaround and there's not going to be like a whole bunch of practice time that I think they're going to try and bank on some built-in chemistry.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's a fair one. It's a fair one. Like I said, this is just this is the original mock out, and I wanted to talk it out with you, and I think that you're presenting a really good case. And the reason why I had Verhaeghe as the extra guy over him is just because I did feel like, hey, don't you want to have somebody else who you feel like is a big goal scorer in the mix? Don't you want to feel like there's someone else around if one of these line combinations doesn't work out that you can just kind of put him in there? Or you just even do have the Panthers line where it's like you put him on the wing next to, like he's there, Reinhardt's there, you put like a McDavid in the middle and you just see how the chips fall.
Yeah, he's a big game player.
Mm-hmm.
I think they want a little bit more defensive element to their forwards because they're worried about the goalies. So I love having Mark Stone on my fourth line. He's such a good two-way player. Yeah. That's why maybe we would pick Cirelli over Verhaeghe.
Yeah, Cirelli with Stone would be great.
Yeah.
I just loved the idea of having Scheifele and Wilson getting into the faces of other players on that line, and knowing Stone has some of that edge to his game too. Seeing those three on a line, it would warm my heart. It really would. Like, it would just make me feel good inside, seeing them get in the corners, seeing them in scrums in front of the net, and just feeling like you've got the baddest group, right? Like somebody that's getting in the face of the Kachucks, and you say, yeah, I feel good about where Canada stands. That to me is great. Like, Team Canada 2014 had such a good intimidation factor. It was on the blue line, but it really was there, you know? Like, you had Shea Weber, you had Drew Doughty, you had just like a real team with real size. And I don't think that the blue line is the same this time around, which I'll get into now. Okay, so
No.
Taves, Makar, like, we're doing that, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, and Theodore Pietrangelo, I think too.
Yep. So that's my next one. Then it gets probably a little bit more controversial for me, because I'm going Morrissey Tanev and then Uyghur as the extra guy.
Oh,
yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, I know people will say homer pick, but every single inclination in my bones tells me that you would never feel bad about having a Morrissey Tanev pairing on the ice. And that Chris Tanev, again, you're talking about that Cirelli argument, then I would make the same one for Chris Tanev.
I'm not going to go against you. I love this guy's game. And you also have to realize, like some of the names like Bouchard being thrown out there.
Absolutely not.
Like, you only got only one guy can run PP1.
Yep.
And it's going to be Makar.
Yep.
Right. So you need someone to be on the penalty kill. And Tanev's such a heart and soul guy, like blocks every shot. Every teammate who's ever played with him raves about this guy. So I think you want guys like that. I think it would be a fantastic choice. I'm not convinced it's going to happen, but I'm not going to argue with your choice. I think he'd be a fantastic addition on third pair.
Last is the goalies, and who cares? Because it's the same ones that basically everybody. I don't really care who has. Like, if someone's like, "Oh, I have Cam Talbot as my third guy," I'm like, whatever. It's Binnington, and if he can't play well, you're screwed. Like, it's pretty much it. It's Binnington, it's Hill, and it's Thompson.
Yeah, I like Thompson on merit.
Yep.
The good conversation to have, and because again, we're talking about 4 games maximum, and like if you're down to your third goalie, you're probably not making that fourth game.
No,
is Marc-Andre Fleury just for vibes?
Yeah,
and keep Sid happy.
Keep Sid happy.
Be the guy that hangs out and practice. Like, you take a million extra shots in practice. Like, you're probably not even playing, right, or even dressing. So if it's him, I'm not going to cause a stink. But I love the Logan Thompson story. Undrafted guy.
Yeah.
Goes out and he says, I'm not going to be the man. So I had a good talk with him a couple weeks ago, and he goes into Kelly McCrimmon's office and basically says, "Oh, Aiden Hill's your guy? Well, I'm a number one. So if I'm not the number one here, trade me."
God, I love that.
I love that attitude.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you want to hear from a guy. I saw, I think somebody tweeted out that it should just be Kelly McCrimmon that makes the decision on the goaltenders, right? It's like, hey, he's had them all, right? Like, all these guys, they've been with him at some point, all the bubble dudes. But I thought, I don't know, because maybe he made the wrong choice with his own team. So maybe it wouldn't be that guy because of what's happened so far this year. Yeah, I think that it's pretty clear that whatever comes out of this, there's got to be, I think there's going to be conversations about hockey in Canada in general, just with like the declining rate, especially of young men playing the sport. How expensive the sport has become, how homogenous, how professionalized. Like, there's a lot of problems that I just don't know how they fix, especially at the youth level. But the goaltending stuff, I think, is going to come into pretty sharp focus if it ends up being the thing that does cost Canada, and we're heading into an Olympic cycle. Anyways, that's my Team Canada.
The goalie summit.
Yeah, goalie summit, fine. Just have it. Let's do it. Let's figure it out. Because, if we're trying to beg for Joey Decord to get a passport, it's not great. This can't be the way. This just cannot be the way. Okay, so, I'll stick with goaltending to start with you first. So, sticking with goaltending. Woll's won 5 straight. He looks like the not having a training camp mattered, right? The way that he looked at the beginning of the season versus what he looks like now. They've got all these games coming up, so this really isn't that big of a story, in my opinion, because these guys, they're going to make him share the net. I think they always wanted Woll to be the number one, which is kind of fine. But do you see anything, or is there any sense from you that they would lean on him a little bit more and that there would be starting to be a bit of a separation between who is the one and who is the two, even with the way that Stolarz has played, which has been phenomenal and I would argue could be the story of the season up until this point.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because like you mentioned, that the way their schedule is, they really are going to lean on both guys. And they've gone out of their way to try and tamp down any conversation or potential controversy of this guy's our number one and this guy's the backup. They've just kind of stuck with the party line of we got two guys, they're both going to play more than they've ever played. We need them both. And it's not a lie. But internally, for sure, you want the younger guy. You want the guy that you drafted and developed and have poured all these resources in and gave him a raise before he really earned it. I mean, phenomenal goalie, but just didn't have the resume, didn't have the games played, didn't have the track record of staying healthy when you gave him $15 million or whatever. Mm-hmm. You internally, it makes sense. You want that guy to be the guy, but he's still got to do it. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things I've noticed is, you know, of course he missed the start of the game because of the groin tightness or whatever. But it was more just how he was. He was feeling the pressure because, you know, when you talk to him, his answers were a little bit more clipped. He wasn't as chatty. And now it's like you're talking to a different person. He's joking around. He's having casual conversations. He's way more relaxed. And that's just, he's confident. And he's confident because he's won a bunch. He loves the defense he's playing in front of. That's the other thing. Both goalies look good in part. Like they're both positionally sound, good, big goalies. But in part why they're playing so well is Berube's structure and the fact they went out and got two more real defensemen. Like we were talking about Tanev. Woll just raves about how much this team is willing to block shots. And if you look at the Leaf shot blocks, they're climbing up the charts. They blocked way more than, per 60 or whatever than they did last year. So the goalies are loving playing behind Berube's system and this blue line. And just Woll, I think mentally is in a much better spot. He's feeling it right now. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I would caution is because, and it's partly just the schedule. It was such a long break between games there, is I wonder if Anthony Stolarz needs to keep going in a rhythm. He looked a little not quite dialed in to start that Florida game. And maybe it's being back in that building. I don't know. But it took him a while to find his groove in that Panthers game. And I don't know if you can wait and sit either guy too long. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it just makes sense to try and balance it out right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, so you mentioned that, like the structure with Berube and how different this team is defensively. And everybody is acknowledging that right now, right? Like the amount of goals that they were scoring and have been scoring at 5-on-5, and yet the record they've accumulated, it's impossible to deny, right? It's those differences, their ability to defend and their ability to get just their ability in net in general. I am curious, though, as somebody who's there on the day-to-day, if there is a different feeling or mood around the team than there has been in years prior.
I don't know if the mood is all that different. I think they definitely have a different. The changes in the system, the changes in the coach, mm-hmm. I think have been positive, and I think it took them a while to figure it out. I think it was a bit of a shakeup. Okay, this is how we're going to play. You know, we're dumping and chasing. We're a forecheck team now. If we don't play strong defensively, it's going to get called out. Like this is quite an adjustment. I mean, they used to be number 1 or 2 pretty much every year in 5-on-5 scoring, and now all of a sudden they're being asked to play in more low event games. And for some guys, I think it's perfect. Like this is perfect for Matthew Nyes. He's a straight line guy. Go to the net. You know, now he's studying tape of Zach Hyman and how to get tips and greasy rebound goals. And that's like Berube's system is made for this guy. Some other guys, I think it's a bit of like, okay, how do I fit in here? You know, William Nylander's natural instinct is not to dump it in and go chase it. You know, he still likes to cut through the neutral zone. And, you know, at times it's costly. At times you need it. So there's been a bit of an adjustment. I do think the mood of the coach has had a positive effect. I think Sheldon Keefe was understandably under pressure. I think he was wound pretty tight.
Mm-hmm.
And Berube is strict and direct, but he also, has a laugh. He's a little bit more calm. Like he doesn't ride the roller coaster as much as the former coach. And I think that has had a positive effect in terms of, you're talking about mood around the team.
Yeah, I just don't see how it couldn't. And the other thing, too, is when you're around people, and again, I'm really trying to make this clear that I don't want this to be like a shot at Sheldon Keefe, because I think that the guy worked his ass off and he had to learn part of it on the job, and that some of this was circumstantial. Like, everything that people who have been around Keefe have told me, like, and it's been a few of them, is like, this guy is the most attention to detail guy that there is, that like he does not take things lightly. But when you're around people who are stressed out all the time, that can bleed into others, right? Like having the pressure of wondering if it's going to be your job on the line day in, day out, having someone who is like obsessed with the tiny details, I think that can be exhausting for others. I know I'm that kind of guy. Like, I'm that kind of person who cares about every little detail, every little thing. And every once in a while, I got to check myself being like, okay, like, oof, let that one go, like, because it's not going to do well for the group if you're just kind of going over all those tiny little things all of the time. And so I would just imagine that, having someone who is a little bit more reserved when it comes to the way that they're speaking, a little bit calmer in terms of demeanor, that could not have a negative effect on a group that, to me, kind of already has enough pressure on them, already probably feels the weight of the world constantly, that those kinds of things are actually going to be meaningful for this group.
Well, I think so. Sheldon comes in and it's his first organization as a coach.
Learning on the fly.
Learning on the fly under tons of pressure. You got all this high-end talent. They're in their win a cup now window, tons of pressure. So I think he put a ton of pressure on himself to really drill down on studying every opponent.
Mm-hmm.
In the pregame talks, I'll give you an example. Some teams coming in, and Sheldon would say, well, they're third on rush chances, so we really got to protect the rush, and they do this well. And Berube's tone is more just the same every day. It's more about what the Leafs need to do. We need to go to the net. We need to play direct. We need to screen the goal. And it's always the same stuff. It kind of didn't matter. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. They want to play the Leafs way. Whereas I think Sheldon was such a student of the game and working so hard at his job that he was almost more focused on how do we beat this opponent on this night. And I got to think about which lines I'm going to start. Whereas Berube's kind of, no, we're who we are. We want to be the same way, whether we're home or away, and we're going to impose our identity onto you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just the confidence that comes from, winning a cup, being around the league a long time, mm-hmm. multiple organizations, seeing how different things work. And also to think that, I think they're both good coaches. I just think their minds work differently.
Yeah.
And I think it was Keefe's doing a great job with the Devils. But I think it was overdue that they just had a different voice in there.
Yeah, I just think that there's just absolutely no doubt about it. Anyway, bubble guys. So I was talking about this on Leafs Talk Saturday, that if you watch that game, there were maybe 7 forwards that were going to be on the playoff roster. Like, there's just going to be a ton of turnover, whether it's just the internal guys that come back or players that they add at the deadline. Dudes moving in and out of that group. It's like what makes it kind of really encouraging watching them, and also harder to criticize when they do lose to teams like the Panthers. Again, you don't want to have it be a complete lack of accountability, but it's tough to say, I can't believe you didn't beat the Panthers in basically a must-win for them in their barn when you were playing a second line that included Nick Robertson and Pontus Holmberg, right? Like, mm-hmm. It's kind of fair just to at least mention in those circumstances. But again, they've done well. But some of these guys coming back, I'm not as concerned about some of the guys, because it's the same thing as the Steves thing where you go, okay, just to back down to the minors, easy peasy. But what is your sense of the timeline on Domi? Because it feels like, we've got some guys where we know it's going to be a while, so some of these guys are going to get extended looks. But what is your understanding of the timeline with Domi?
Yeah, I hopefully we get more information in about an hour when they morning skate. So he didn't travel with the team. He hasn't skated. It went from he's pushing through it and we're just giving him some practices off, mm-hmm. to all of a sudden his last practice he finished and immediately left. Like the other guys were hanging around, working on their one-timers or face-offs or whatever. As soon as the whistle blew, he took off. We haven't seen him since, and find out he's on IR. So he was battling some for a while. It's obviously gotten pretty bad. And, it's not been a big story just in the fact that they keep winning, and that cures all, and it's given all these guys extra time to heal up. But, yeah, I can't give you a timeline. I think it's concerning, the fact that, he hasn't been skating and not even traveling with the team. Like, usually if you're getting close, you travel so that you can practice. And the Leafs had a couple practices when they were in Florida and be around the guys and all that good stuff. But he stayed back and is probably getting some sort of treatment, lower body. It's everything's under lock and key these days.
Well, yeah, it's interesting for two reasons to me. One is how much it's like mirroring what happened with Austin Matthews. And two is what you kind of mentioned there where, hey, okay, he's not traveling, he's not doing these things. Okay, sure, the Leafs schedule was so light. There was almost this implication that, hey, with the limited amount of games that they were playing over such a large stretch, now was a sensible time to give guys an extra few games off, right? But now that they're back under the gun here, and it's like, we're playing 1 million games, and every night the Leafs play now. It's just every night there's a game. Every night you and I are working. Hey, you would assume that now is the time that, guys would be getting back. And the fact that he isn't is the interesting one. And again, when you're talking about the forward group and we're having these conversations of like who's in, who's out, well, it's pretty easy if there's no guys who are coming back in.
Yeah, exactly. But I think so. Alex Nylander is the interesting one for me, just because he requires waivers and he's on such a cheap deal. Like, there's injuries around the league. Like, does someone scoop him and break Williams' heart? Maybe. But it's pretty obvious to me from how Berube uses him that, he's the next guy out. And maybe he would have been, if it was up to the coach, maybe he would have been sent down before Alex Steeves even. I don't see it. And he's not really trusted, and he was given a shot even on the top power play unit for like half a game and lost that spot right away. So he seems to be on the outs, and Minton and Grabenka don't require waivers, and it's probably best for those guys individually to play more time with the Marlies anyway. I think this has been great. You get a free look at what they look like at the NHL level. I don't think there's anything, negative about this, but I'm with you. Like, Pontus Holmberg's still in the top 6. Like, Steven Lorentz, I love the guy, but now he's on the third line when really he's just an awesome fourth liner. So eventually they need the healthy bodies, and for my money, I still think there's at least one trade at forward coming.
Okay, so that's the kind of where I was going to close this one because, to summarize my Nylander 2 thoughts, and Alex, like, I don't care what happens. If Nylander's disappointed, it's like, hey, man, you know how you have that $11.8 million coming your way? Or it's like, that's that. You'll be fine. This is a luxury, not a necessity. And I would say to any team that actually claims Alex Nylander, like, okay, sure, I guess. You're going to play him? Because, I don't know. I think there's a reason why he didn't get an NHL contract in the first place, even though there are reports that he maybe turns them down to go to Toronto. It's totally fine. The same thing with Minton and Grabenka. Eventually, you kind of want them back there. And if you're not getting that help right away from some of the other forwards, right? Like, some of these dudes are going to be out for a while. You're seeing transactions around the NHL early this season. Do you get any sense that Toronto would want to expedite a timeline to bring a body in here, even though they don't have a lot of bullets to shoot when it comes to trades and the assets to acquire players?
No, not unless there's a really good deal.
Yeah.
But they're not going to. No, I don't get the sense that they are, because they've done fine. Think about all because their goalies have been good, because the defense has been healthy, knock wood. Like, Jake McCabe had that scare, but after the game, Berube said he should be good to go tonight. So because that's been fine, and because they've been getting by, and now Austin's back, it's like they kind of weathered the storm already. And so, are they, of course, he's kicking tires and everything, but I don't feel like the Leafs feel the need to make a move just yet. I think they want to, there's only so many picks they have. There's only so many prospects that teams are interested. They have to be smart with these bullets. And I think they have, for my money, I think they should swing big and see what second line, maybe third line center is out there in a couple months and try and go for the biggest one available. This is a good team. I question their secondary scoring, but the goalies stay healthy. The D stays healthy. They have the legit game breakers up front. They need some support. And I think this could be the year more than others where they should actually go for the high-end shopping instead of, the Labushkins of the world.
Yep, totally agree. Luke, thanks as always for the time, buddy. I always appreciate you.
Okay. Have a good one, JD. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers. Luke Fox, NHL on Sportsnet.